Hey guys, this is Mike from Deepwood Force of Will coming at you guys with another video. I know it's been quite a while since we did our last video. Unfortunately, life gets in the way, but after a lot of just general playtesting, a lot of discussion between friends, and some really good insightful comments from people I know, we actually ended up getting the idea to do this video on the current state of Force of Will. Now, I know that many of you know that Force of Will is just a very wind-focused game right now. Wind just has some of the best ramp, best cancels, and best buff spells that we've seen in the game for a long time. But clearly the most important ones that I think are dominating and making the current format a little more oppressive are these cancel spells. And today we're going to be talking about two of them and figuring out, who's the real culprit when it comes to making this game, in its current state, fairly oppressive. So, to start off, who are our people on the chopping block today? We got the Terrible Two being Otherworld Dreams and Severing Winds. Now, these cards have seen a lot of play recently in decks that splash green. Obviously, they work well together. They're just very cheap cancels that allow you to basically use essentially 1 mana to deal with any 2 cards your opponent controls and give them the deficit of the cost they've paid while you used very efficient cards to deal with it. These cards are also the reason that a lot of just very J-Ruler based strategies are seeing a lot of play. Stuff like Feyrer, IU, just that kind of stuff really is powerful right now because of how potent these cards are in canceling spells that are played from the hand rather than having just a J-Ruler enter the board and not be able to be cancelled. So these cards definitely see play for very good reason, and we're going to go over each of them, both going over their advantages of playing them, disadvantages of playing them, strengths, weaknesses, and at the end kind of comment on what the state of the game is with them together and what it would be like with them separate. So starting off, we'll go with Exhibit A, which is Otherworld Dreams. And again, this is a 1 mana quick cast green spell for 1 green that says cancel target spell your opponent controls. Then your opponent may play a card with total cost equal to or less than the total cost of the card canceled this way from their hand without paying its cost. Now, obviously, we can see some great benefits from this card originally. First things first, of course, it offers you tons of advantage over your opponent, being able to just say, no, that one doesn't seem right. You can play another spell, but that one, nah, you can't do that. And also, you get some really fantastic knowledge on what your opponent might have. Say they're playing a card that costs 1 mana, you use Otherworld's Dreams and hit it, and then they say, alright, I won't play anything else. That gives you the idea that they might not have another 1-drop in hand. That might give you the idea that it's a very situational 1-drop as well, so it definitely depends on what your opponent might be playing next. Again, the third point actually kind of goes into that, where it says it punishes early game threats. Being able to, if your opponent doesn't draw a very good curve, only has 1 thing that they can play on turn 1, and you just Otherworld Dreams it, they lose all the value from that, they lose all that momentum, and you just gain so much advantage on them over tempo. And of course, the last really big point is that because it's a 1-cost green spell, it synergizes very well with Sacred Elf, who playing on turn 1 and then just Otherworld Dreamsing your opponent means that you've stuck a Resonator on board and your opponent has lost out on some advantage for their turn, which is, very potent. But of course the card isn't perfect and does come with a couple of disadvantages. Technically speaking, in the card's actual design, it doesn't really, put your opponent behind on an advantage. You kind of 1-for-1 a card from their hand, you use 1 card to stop one of their cards, and then they play another card, which you've then kind of gone neutral on. Like they've had to use 2 cards, but you've paid the mana to try and stop the first one, and then the second card, you don't know if it's going to be a more powerful card in going forward. Again, it does require you to plan for the next card that they play out of their hand. If you don't have a game plan to deal with the next threat that they put out, that they're playing for free through Otherworld Dreams, you'll probably get burned because of that. And the last thing is that it definitely breaks the game flow that both players have. What I mean by that, and I put it in quotation marks because I wasn't sure how to accurately articulate this, is that it's just kind of a card that stops your opponent from doing something, but at the same time doesn't really net the player any advantage. from playing it if they don't have a game plan going forward, and a lot of the time can be used in very niche situations, but not a situation where, you know, you are in a clear state of advantage over your opponent, unless you combo it with, you know, another card that might be played for free that could also cancel another spell. I'm not sure what that could be. Hey, Exhibit B, Severing Winds. Again, the second combo of the Terrible 2 here. Of course, Severing Winds being a 4-cost, quick cast green chant. 2 green and 2 colorless on the cost where it has quick cast, I said before. And its ability is that you can cancel target spell, of course, no, you know, extra little text on there. But also, if your opponent played 2 or more cards this turn, you can pay 2 mana, 2 green, and 2 colorless less to play it. So you play it for free. This has definitely been the bane of a lot of players lately, but of course I definitely want to go over the advantages and disadvantages of this card. First and foremost, the reason that it was printed originally is that it was used to punish combo-centric decks. Severing Winds was the reason that Thethys and Gwyber back in the Alice Cluster, Lapis Cluster combo format was completely dead when this card was released. If your opponent's trying to extend on a wider board, if they're trying to overextend and trying to kill you with a big push, Severing Winds keeps you safe and is normally used for more defensive purposes. Obviously, it can be used for offensive purposes if your opponent's trying to play a bunch of cards to stop it, but that's definitely another use that it tends to see more because of the combo with Otherworld Dreams, but we'll go over that later. Again, this card is often played for no cost, and a lot of the time can be splashed into decks that aren't even playing with the wind attribute. I've seen it played in stuff like Mikage, I've seen it played in decks like Gil Lapis, where it's just pure red-black, but then you just see 3 to 4 Severing Winds just to make sure that you stay safe against people that are trying to extend against you. And the last thing, of course, is that because they are essentially a 0-cost card, if you have multiple of them and your opponent keeps playing a second card, a third card, a fourth card, as long as you have multiple Severing Winds, you can just keep chaining them together and your opponent cannot play anything if they continue to try and overextend. So a lot of the time players can get very frustrated from the chain of Severing Winds, but of course being able to know that it's there and playing around it is essential for playing the game well against these cancel-centric decks. Now, going on to the disadvantages, I've already mentioned this before, that Severing Winds can be very easy to play around. If you're planning on playing just 1 card for the turn and your opponent has, say, 2 green and 1 blue mana open and nothing else to use, you know that that first card cannot get Severing Winds, so you'll play that without even having to worry about it. Again, this kind of goes into that next point where the card is definitely less effective against control decks that are just trying to kind of slow roll it out, play 1 card per turn, maybe even not play a card in a turn, and wait for your opponent to be tapped out on mana before you even try to play something. Decks that try to play on your opponent's turn. There's just a lot of really good cards that allow, a lot of good control decks that allow you to play exclusively against Severing Winds and just being able to know how to navigate around it. If you're playing a dark control deck, because occasionally you'll just nameless miss somebody, see the Severing Winds and be like, alright, I'll take out something else, and then I just won't play something for the rest of the turn. That's fine. I can wait. So it forces you to play patiently, but it is very, very easy to play around if you expect it. And the last thing is that it does require 2 green will to be played when you're trying to play it for its actual cost, rather than being played for 0. And if you don't have the 2 green will open and your opponent knows you have it, they know that they can just play you right into it. No need to worry about playing a second card, and Severing Winds will just fizzle out, or remain dead in the hand. So, again, both of these cards have very distinct advantages and disadvantages, but of course the problem comes from when they are combined. I mentioned before that Otherworld Dreams combos very well with Sacred Elf being a 2/3 body that can just produce the green at quick cast speed, and allows you to just Otherworld Dreams at any time. Once the first Otherworld Dreams is cast, your opponent then casts a second card in the turn without playing its cost. But in the wording of Severing Winds, if your opponent played 2 or more cards this turn, you can just play it for free. If your opponent tries to play anything else, you've got another Severing Winds, so just this constant chain of just not being able to put cards out of your hand if your opponent gets the Otherworld Dreams off originally is something that is incredibly rage-inducing to players. It's a reason that a lot of people have started to despise green. And of course, that's definitely not what Force Will wants. Force Will wants everybody to be able to play the decks that they love, but unfortunately, they just tend to give a lot of love to green, and this card combo The fact that they're both legal at the same time definitely is a no-brainer to be played in a lot of decks, and definitely can be a source of a lot of oppression in the current metagame. So, what's the solution? A lot of players have been talking about potentially banning one of these cards, and while I'm not a huge fan of just outright banning cards, obviously, if a deck is completely oppressing the format, I like to see pieces of those decks go, but because these cards are just kind of ubiquitous with the color of green, it's hard to say that I want to see these go. But unfortunately, with the way that the deck currently is, the way that these cards interact currently, a lot of decks are just being pushed so far out of the metagame because they can't keep up with cheating cards into the field through other effects, J-Ruler-based strategies. It's just very difficult to be a it's almost impossible to be a non-green deck in the current format, let's put it that way. So with all these options to consider and a lot of deliberation with some friends of mine, we are definitely saying that Otherworld Dreams is probably the more potent of the two. A lot of people immediately see Severing Winds, say it could be cast for free, this card is just broken, and I'm here to say that the card is actually very easy to play against depending on the deck that you're building. If you're just trying to overextend on your opponent, you are going to run into a Severing Winds, but there are ways to play around it. If you expect the Severing Winds, you can slow roll it out a little more, and you could just kind of, as long as you keep an even pace and note that your opponent is keeping the will open for Severing Winds, it's a very easy card to play around, and normally will sit dead in the hand if you are able to play around it effectively. Otherworld Dreams, on the other hand, is just such a powerhouse card at 1 mana. It just does so much. If it catches you at the wrong, inopportune time, and you just lose all the value of your first turn play, it's just a very, it's an unfun experience for a lot of players, because playing around Severing Winds feels rewarding. It feels like you've masterfully guided yourself around this card that could potentially just end the game for you. Otherworld Dreams just comes out turn 1 and says, nope, you can't do that, and you lose the game. So, just for player experience, Otherworld Dreams definitely seems to be the one that a lot of people would prefer to go, and I'm definitely on the same boat as that. If either of those cards were to leave our current standard format, Otherworld Dreams is definitely the one that has my vote. But of course, thank you so much for watching, guys. Please leave your comments in the video. I would love to hear your opinions on this. A lot of the community is very divided, and I want to see, you know, your arguments for why you think Severing Winds is more powerful, more oppressive than Otherworld Dreams, and I just want to know what you guys think could be done, should be done, and what steps you think that that Force of Will company should take in order to remedy the fairly oppressive format we have. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. This is Mike from Deepwood Force of Will, signing out.